Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Time with Junebug. That's me. And I know what you thinking. Girl, your hair's crazy, and that's a lot of gold eye glitter for a Monday. And you know what? It's been a weird past week, so you get what you get. So we're just gonna record this, and sorry if I'm just off. But anyway, as mentioned in my last true crime with just that lovely woman, Amelia Dyer. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing next. I have a little list of things I want to cover, and I forgot. Another shitty lady was I was covering next. So today we are talking about Marie Delphine LaLaurie. Now, that name might be familiar, and we'll get to that in a second. This takes place about 1830 to 1834, and I always say the age of the victims in case anything with children bothers you. And it's nothing 100% concrete, but I think the ages are 2 and up. Now, this takes place in New Orleans, Louisiana, and the status is it's pretty much solved. I have questions, but it's solved. So let's start with the pop culture, the reason why that name might sound familiar to you. So it's mentioned in the novel Unsung by Scott Alexander. The novel Fever Season by Barbara Hambly incorporated some of these elements into the book. Now, Kathy Bates portrayed her in American Horror Story, which is probably where the name probably sounds the most familiar. And then I was like, I feel like I've seen a video on this, and it's probably because Kendall Ray covered a video on this years and years ago, and obviously many others, but I saw Kendall Ray's video. What I'm discussing is what Kathy Bates' character is based off of. And I just want to put it out there that Marie Laveau and Marie LaLaurie, there's no evidence that they ever met. So Marie Laveau will not be making an appearance. Just wanted to let you know, in case you're just waiting. She's not gonna show up. And I do want to note, this is gruesome, and it's a lot. I will probably leave some stuff out, but anyway, let's get into it. Marie Delphine McCarthy, or McCarthy, and side note, I am probably going to pronounce some things wrong. There's a lot of French. I will try my best, but I can't guarantee it'll be perfect. But she was born in New Orleans, Spanish Louisiana, is part of the Louisiana Purchase area, on March 19th of 1787. To her dad, Louis Barthélemy de McCarthy, and mom, Marie, it looks like Jeanne, from an English standpoint, but I'm guessing it's maybe Marie-Jean L'Érable, and she was one of 5 children. Now, her parents were well known in the European Creole community, aka they were wealthy and had influence. Let's just get this out of the way. They're wealthy, influential white people in Louisiana, mainly New Orleans. There we go. Now, when she was 7, it was said her family already owned 1,344 acres of land. And I guess for reference, I don't even live on half an acre. Marie, had an uncle who was once the governor of Louisiana. So again, influential. Oh, it says the governor of Louisiana and Florida. Again, things were, the borders weren't quite the same as they are now back then. So I don't know if it was separate times but she also had a cousin who was formerly the mayor of New Orleans. Again, so very influential in that area. Now, time for a bit of a historical note, because I feel like some context is needed. The Haitian Revolution happened in 1791. It would inspire more insurrections, revolts, revolutions from enslaved workers against their owners, their slavers, their masters, whatever the term was used at the time. Now, this made slaveholders in the South nervous because they had slaves and they didn't want any uprisings or them to get any ideas. How dare they think they can have freedom? So for me, it seems a bit backwards, but since they were so afraid of their slaves having uprising, I would think they would maybe treat them better. but they ended up treating them worse at this time period. I don't know if it's just to instill so much fear was their logic, but treatment for them for slaves got worse. Now, that's the historical notes, but back to Marie. So we're going straight to her first marriage. And don't worry, I know some of you are thinking, what about her upbringing? Well, I didn't skip over her childhood because she got married when she was 13. So we're still in her childhood, essentially. Now, on June 11th of 1800, she married Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo, who was about 29, 30 years old. Now, they got married at the St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans. Now, it's said he was a high-ranking Spanish royal officer. Now, in 1804, Don Ramon, I'm sorry, I just love that name, was appointed the Consul General for Spain in the territory of Orleans. I'm sorry. And he would have to appear at the royal court in Madrid, given his new position. Now, when they started their travels, when he was about, obviously, 34 years old, they went to Havana first to then sail to Spain. But he suddenly died in Havana before they left. Again, at about 34 years old. And a few days later, like after his death, Marie gave birth to their daughter. I don't even want to imagine going through that. Now, I'm sorry in advance. I might butcher this poor little girl's name. But their daughter's name was Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez y Angelo de la Candelaria. Very long name. Nickname is Porquita. Porquita? Yeah. Now, put that into context. Marie was 17 and a widow with a brand new baby. At this point, I kind of feel bad for Marie because I don't even know what I would do. Even being at a more age-appropriate age, I wouldn't handle this well. But I guess it's probably more common back then. So, freshly widowed. She doesn't really need to go to Spain anymore. So she and baby returned home. So now she's back home. Time for her second marriage. So in June of 1808, so she's about 21 years old. I feel like a bit more acceptable to get married. Legally an adult. She wed, looks like Jean in English to me, but I'm guessing is Jean Blanc. So she married Jean Blanc, who was a prominent banker, merchant, lawyer, and legislator. He had many titles, but he, again, influential. And he was about 12 years older than her, so around 33 years old. And I know you're thinking, ew, but me and my husband are 12 years apart, so I can't judge too much. But he bought a house for them at 409 Royal Street. Now, they would have 4 kids. Bear with me on these names. They are making me giggle a little bit. So there's Marie-Louise Pauline, Louise-Marie Laurie, Marie-Louise Jean, and Jean-Pierre Pauline Blanc. They really liked Jean and Louise and Marie. There's a lot of those. What did they call them? You can't just say Marie, 5 people will answer. Anyway, they're not pertinent to the story. I saw those names and I'm like, wow, they really put thoughts into that. But anyway, after they had their 4 children, her second husband died in 1816. So they were married about 8 years. She was now around 29, 30 years old. The age her husband was when she first got married. Yeah, 29, 30, twice widowed, and had 5 children. Again, at this point, I do feel bad for Marie still. I kind of do. Because that's a lot. And I do want to note, I don't know what these first 2 husbands died from. I thought I saw one source that said first husband, Don Ramon, died in a shipwreck near Havana. I only saw that mentioned once. There's been other theories. It could have been Marie. I don't have the answer for you. Now, time for her third, and I'm pretty sure final marriage. So on June 25th, 1825, when she's about 38, 39 years old. So she waited a bit, it seems. She married physician Leonard Louis Nicolas LaLaurie, who was about 23 or 24 years old. She was a bit of a cougar with this final marriage. Maybe in her mind, she's thinking if I marry a younger one, this one should live at least longer. I don't know, but again, physician, money, influence. But in 1831, Marie bought property at 1140 Royal Street. The next year, 1832, she had her famous 2-story mansion built there with attached slave quarters. That comes into mention later. But it's just funny because when we think of mansion, like I think of something absurd that like is bigger than anyone could possibly need. And they're talking about this 2-story mansion. It just makes me giggle a little bit how times have changed. So she did this all pretty much herself, and which back then that's pretty impressive for a woman. It was due to her status pretty much in New Orleans that she could do this. And I'm guessing she also had money from, I don't know for certain, but I'm guessing she had money from her first 2 husbands passing, and just with her family, like she could get away with this. Like just doing things normal everyday women couldn't do at this time. Now, I guess their marriage was a bit strained because Marie would ask the court for a separation from, quote, bed and board of her husband, end quote, which again, back then, ooh, scandalous. I guess he treated her like shit. I didn't see too much about that. But also since the separation didn't seem to be permanent, like I never saw about them like divorcing or anything like that. I think they were like living in the same house, possibly together, until said event coming up. Now, another side note, dealing with her multitude of children. Different sources say different things, but she may have had a son with Leonard, her third and final husband. I did see there was another child named Jean-Louis LaLaurie. So it's possible she has 5 kids or 6 kids. I don't know exactly. It was a bit iffy, but I wouldn't be surprised if she had 6. It just seems like a standard amount back then. Now, at this point, you could almost kind of feel bad for Marie a little bit. Married at 13. First husband drops dead, pops out a baby days later in a foreign country. Gets married a second time. Has 4 more children. Husband dies, and then married a third and final time, has another child, possibly, and supposedly this husband kind of treats her like shit. So at this point, you could kind of feel bad for Marie, but sit down. You won't feel bad for long. So let's get into why Marie was a shitty person. Her treatment of enslaved people, particularly hers. There's probably other reasons she was shitty too, but this is like the main one, okay? This is the one that's like criminal offense. And that's also why I mentioned earlier in the video about the Havana Revolution, right? No, Haitian Revolution, my bad. Now, it was noted that enslaved people of Marie were, quote, singularly, haggard and wretched, end quote, which is quite a defensive way to describe someone, I feel like. Now, rumors about her treatment of her slaves got so bad that a lawyer had to get go to their property and remind them of the laws for the quote unquote upkeep of enslaved people. Like the rumors were so bad in a time when slavery was fine that they're like, girl, let's simmer down, if that tells you anything. Now, he found no evidence for the rumors during his visit, and the visit was between 1831 and 1834. However, with 12 documented deaths at her mansion between 1830 and 1834, and no cause of deaths were mentioned or allowed to be put in the death certificates. Now, 5 of those deaths came from one family. A cook named Bonnie and her 4 kids, ages 13, 10, 6, and 2. Now, with the 12 documented deaths at her house, which absurd, and eyewitnesses saying they saw a young slave girl fall off the roof of the house trying to escape a whipping from Marie, died, and the little girl was just buried on the property somewhere. Another official investigation of the LaLauries began. Hearing about the little girl makes me sad, because supposedly she was brushing Marie's hair and she pulled on a snarl too roughly and it hurt Marie, so she was trying to just whip her and she ran up to the roof to escape, and then she just fell or jumped off the roof. Now, with the investigation beginning, they were found guilty of illegal cruelty of their slaves. Now, they were forced to, quote unquote, let go of, because these Their slaves weren't just automatically free after this. No. They had to let go of 9 enslaved people in the home. Sadly, which I guess law enforcement just looked the other way, but a relative of Marie's ended up with those 9 slaves and then just sold them back to Marie. So they ended up back at her house. Now, on April 10th of 1834, a huge fire broke out at the mansion. Now, pretty sure Marie and all of her family got out, just fine, but they refused to hand over the key for rescuers to open the slave quarters. It's suspicious. And also, freaking rude. So, the rescuers or the first responders, who was there first, broke down the door because they just refused to give them the key, broke down the slave quarters door to help. And what they saw was horrendous, to say the least. The people who broke down the door, they found, quote, 7 people, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. End quote. So it wasn't just a slave quarter, it seemed to be a torture chamber for the slaves, as if being a slave wasn't bad enough. Now these slaves stated, because they were alive, but these slaves stated they had been imprisoned in this room for several months. They also found, again, back to the rescuers, they found a woman bound in an iron collar and an old woman with a super deep old wound on her head. And it said this woman was so weak that she couldn't walk, essentially, so she had to be helped out. It was said that all of these slaves were emaciated and they had scars from being flayed with a whip, and they were all bound in chains and with spiked iron collars, forcing them to keep their heads up at all times. Now, speaking of the fire, it turns out the fire actually started when the 70-year-old cook attempted suicide because she was so afraid of being punished and taken to the room where slaves, quote, never come back, end quote. She was so afraid of getting punished by Marie and being sent to this room for torture that she chose suicide. And the reason she chose setting the house on fire, which may seem like an extreme / maybe unusual way to go about it, is because she was chained by the ankle to the stove. So she used what was available, which was fire and the stove. Now, when local citizens learned about the abuse the slaves were suffering, which it kind of spread like a fire, they formed a mob and destroyed the mansion further until only half the walls, some of the walls remained. They destroyed everything, which again, for a time when slaves were still slavery was still allowed, to make locals who also most likely had slaves, to make them so upset at the way you treated your slaves that they formed a mob to destroy your house, and you were an influential, wealthy person of the community. Back then, it just seems insane that you treated them so bad that other fellow slave owners were like, the hell are you doing? And destroyed your home. Just keep that in mind. When I was thinking about that, I'm like, holy crap. Now, after this, the slaves were taken from Marie, thank goodness, and they were put in the local jail for some reason. I don't know if it was because they don't have an actual home, but they were also put in the local jail for public viewing, for people to see how much they had suffered, as if them being looked at like in a zoo wasn't more suffering. Or maybe it was a relief just being away from Marie. I don't understand the logic. Now, it was also reported, sadly, that 2 slaves would die shortly after rescue from just the condition they were in. Now, we gotta get into the aftermath. And I just wanna warn you, it's going to piss you off. But Marie did not face a single consequence for any of this. Because during the mob riot, when they were destroying what was left of her home, she fled to Mobile, Alabama, and then took a boat to Paris where she spent the rest of her days. Not a charge against her. Free woman. Completely fine. Now, it's not really known how she spent the last of her days or the rest of her life or how or when she died, because I don't think she never came back to America. She wanted to, but some of her relatives were like, girl, that's probably not a good idea. And she's like finally agreed and didn't go back. Now, one wild theory about how she died, don't think it's true at all, but it'd be kind of hilarious, was that she died in a boar hunting accident. Again, nothing to back that up, but I think it'd be kind of funny. But it's generally believed she died December 8th, 1849 at about 62 years old. Now, she was originally buried in France because that's where obviously she spent the rest of her life, but she was later exhumed and brought back and buried with the rest of her family in New Orleans, which I don't quite know who exhumed her and brought her back, but someone did. I wonder if it was like a grandchild or great-grandchild, but enough about Marie. Another thing that came from this was Harriet Martineau, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, would interview locals and would publish her findings in her book, The Retrospect of Western Travel, Volume 2, and this was about 1838. She was a very well-known and very smart, educated woman for the time. Like, very smart, educated women aren't necessarily rare, but like she was known back then for being like, everyone was like, she is smart. I think you know what I mean. Because women were just kind of like, shh, just have babies and sweep and cook things. So the fact that this woman's like traveling around the world and she's journaling and she's writing books and she's just super educated and she was, I think, a philosopher, like Harriet was cool, and she wrote a book about this. We'll mention it in parts of her book. Now, the original mansion, as we know, did not survive the fire and the mob. It was actually rebuilt after 1838, so it stood there for like 4 years. Because when Harriet went for like interviewing, it was still in ruin. But it was rebuilt by Pierre Trestor. I don't know who he is, but he rebuilt it. And the building would be many things throughout history, because it's still around today. I think it just might be one big private home. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a bit more secretive. The owner wanted to be on the down low, I think, because I think it last sold in 2012, like in the 2010s, I believe. But throughout history, it's been like the reconstructed building was a high school. It's been apartments, luxury apartments, because I guess they're very different. It's been a refuge. It's been a bar, a furniture store, which that might be kind of cool. And it was once owned by Sir Nicholas Cage himself. Apparently he didn't want it known that he had bought it. I don't know if it's just because he was a celebrity and he didn't want people to know where he lived, or if it's because, you know, kind of not a great reputation for the building. I think some people like to say it's haunted. I don't know. It's not really any merit to that, especially since it's not the original building. But yeah, fun fact, you can tell your friends, Nick Cage used to own the building. And that is it. That is the messed up life, thoughts, feelings of Marie Delphine LaLaurie. Again, the beginning half of her life, you could almost feel bad for her. And then she just got real shitty. I don't like her. I don't know what I'm covering next. I don't think it's another shitty old-timey lady. I think we're gonna take a break from those for a little bit. But sorry again if I was a bit scattered. Life has just been a lot lately. It's not really slowing down this week until maybe the weekend. Anyway, thank you for watching, you 10 to 15 to sometimes 20 loyal viewers, you. And I hope you have a good day. Whatever day it is, I just hope it's a good one. And don't be like Marie. Bye, guys.